Welcome to the Affirming Village Podcast, where we center neurodivergent voices, affirm diverse ways of being, and empower families, educators, and advocates with knowledge that truly honors the whole learner. We're your co-hosts, Dr. Destiny Huff, a late diagnosed autistic ADHD mental health therapist and non-attorney special education advocate, and Lisa Baskin-Wright, an ADHD and dyslexic educator and IEP coach. Together, we dig into conversations about neuroaffirming practices, special education, and disability rights. Please remember, nothing shared on this podcast is medical or legal advice, and the views shared here by the host and the guest are their personal opinions. This space is for educational purposes only, to help you feel informed, empowered, and never alone in the village.
Welcome back to the Affirming Village. I'm Lisa, and today we are having a real and needed conversation about something that so many parents and advocates experience, but really don't talk about: the emotional toll of advocacy.
Yes, and I'm Dr. Destiny Huff, and this one's close to my heart. Between navigating IEP meetings for services and showing up for our neurodivergent kids every single day, it can feel like we're constantly in survival mode.
Exactly. And along the way, we start to carry this heavy mix of parent guilt, advocacy fatigue, and a feeling like if we slow down, everything will fall apart.
But what it doesn't have to be, is that way. And remember, we are reading a script to start the episode, hence why I started laughing as I messed up the line. What if there's space to hold boundaries, to rest, and to find joy again, or, stave water, even in the middle of the hard stuff?
Today, we are diving into the emotional realities of this work, the parts that don't make it into the paperwork or the policy meetings.
We'll talk about how to notice when you're running on empty, how to reframe guilt, and how to build daily practices that center hope and humanity, not just hustle.
So whether you're a parent, advocate, or educator listening today, this episode is your permission slip to breathe.
And to remember that joy isn't a reward for when things get better. It's something we can choose and cultivate right now, even in the thick of it.
All right, let's get into it.
So I'm laughing because obviously when you all hear this episode, it will be a few weeks out from when we're recording it because we batch record. But this episode is actually really perfect timing for Lisa and I. This school year, this 2025 to 2026 school year, has been throwing some haymakers. And so we have been in the midst of, being two neurodivergent individuals ourselves. We have been in the mix of trying to advocate for our families, but also support ourselves in all of it. And I think whether you have learners that are no longer in the home like Lisa does, or you have learners that are, still in the home in school, it's been a ride this year already.
Yeah, it has definitely been a ride. Destiny and I have been leaving voice messages back and forth all week, taking naps. I fell asleep at 7:30 the other day. Last night I made it till 9:30. It's a miracle. We're exhausted. And I think that this is a really important thing to name. One thing that kind of comes to mind when I think about this script, that I had the wrong script, so thus why I flubbed one of the lines. But the part about certain pieces kind of not making it into the policy meetings or the paperwork, in terms of the emotional realities of this work. And, in some ways, I've kind of surprised myself over the years of how well I'm able to separate those or set boundaries. I think I know that I have certain family members that I'm really close with that worry about me and worry, especially in situations that are incredibly reminiscent of my own, how I'm able to set and maintain those emotional boundaries where I can still, show up and give a shit and be really effective as an advocate. What, it took me 30 seconds to start cussing. That's great. Um, but not make it about me or my reaction, right? Like, one of the pieces I think that's really important in this role is typically families are coming to us because they're experiencing stress in this process, right? They don't feel heard, they're not understanding, they're at a stalemate with their team, something's not working for their learner. They're not coming because everything's running smoothly, typically. And I think that there's this tricky balance of really wanting to see and validate and hold well their experience while also not jumping into the pool of big feelings and being somebody that they then also have to take care of. It's
Yes.
tricky.
Yeah. It is. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head for, all of, my advocates listening, and, school staff that are, helping advocate, and even parents that are supporting their friends, right? Because we have a lot of parents that are just like being that support and that sounding board. And one of the things that you have to learn as an advocate is to check your own emotions and to make sure that you are supporting the family while allowing, I feel like, that outrage that you feel on their behalf drive you, but in a professional way.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult when, we'd like to act like we just come across like, I like to call it, me and my sister have the same when we talk about when something's really supposed to be really great, rainbows and kittens. I like to say that we come across situations where it's just, oh, the school's misunderstanding the parent, or there's just a miscommunication or lack of collaboration. Right. No, we come across some pretty, egregious violations to, FAPE and denial of communication and, restraining seclusion. And we come across all these things, and we have to check our own selves. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I actually had, for the first time in my advocacy journey as an advocate this year, where I had a IEP meeting and they were just not understanding what myself and the parent were saying. And then what they were saying was inaccurate. And I had to literally say in the meeting, I don't know if you're misunderstanding me or if I'm just not stating it correctly, but I'm just going to be quiet at this moment. And I've never done that in a meeting, but I did that because I was becoming dysregulated due to the back and forth and the frustration on behalf of the parent, but also being misunderstood as a person. And I apologized to my parent after the meeting. And of course, she was like, no, it was fine, because we still handled everything, got everything done and everything like that. But that was the first time for me as an advocate that I was just like, wow. And afterwards, I had to decompress and get hugs from my husband. And I had to reset it because I was so dysregulated, because I was just so frustrated with how the response in that meeting.
Oh, yeah. And I think, like I said, it's this balance, because we've talked about this in previous episodes and it's relevant here as well, is that this can be a really isolating experience. I mean, that's part of the reason why we do this podcast, is so folks feel less isolated in their experience. And so for those that are working with us one-on-one, part of the gift we can provide is, no, you're not crazy. This is actually a clown show. Right. Yes, I heard what you heard. You are correct. But essentially staying regulated. There have been times where I'm like, what in the world did I just hear? But I'll apologize. You don't need to manage me or my emotions. Mm-hmm. And most of the time families are like, no, it helps me feel like I'm not crazy, because I feel like I couldn't have even dreamt that. I'm not even that creative, right? But yeah, no, it is tricky. It is really tricky. And I think that that's a piece that we don't necessarily talk about as advocates. I'll have people make comments like, I don't know how you do what you do. And I think that's actually a common experience for parents of neurodivergent and disabled learners, where it's actually kind of ableist crap of like, oh, I just would never be able to, that like your path is so hard, right? It just feels gross.
Right.
And I'll hear people kind of give me that feedback in terms of advocacy too, because they hate sitting at an IEP table and they're like, how the hell do you do that for a living? Right? And I actually really enjoy being at an IEP table most of the time. Dusty and I were
Right.
joking before we hit record that she's actually, for the most part, had very pleasant meetings this year. And I
Yes.
wish I could say the same. I've had a lot, but
Yeah.
I've had some not so much.
Right. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that about like, people are like, how do you do it? And, I think sometimes, having done this a few years, for myself, I know there's sometimes where you have a meeting and you take a step back and you're like, do I want to still be at the IV table? Like, do I still want to, and I think that it's one of those things like I tell my parents when sometimes when they'll reach out to me, right? Whether they text me or email me or, we get on a call, they're very dysregulated. They're very in the moment of what's happening. And, they're very frantic and their nervous system is on high alert and the anxiety's ramped up. And so it's like, we're going to do this, and then it's like, I'm not in that space. And so I'm able to go, okay,
Right.
let's talk this through. And by the time we've talked it through, they've come down a little bit, got a little more regulated. They're like, yeah, that is the better approach. So
Yeah.
that's what I think about when it's like the IEP table, right? When we come from the IEP table, we're like, if it was a great meeting, personally, I'm kind of riding a high. Like I'm like, that was amazing communication, collaboration. The parents are happy. We got everything that the learner needed. The parents got a better understanding what the team's doing. The team's rocking it. They're just not communicating it, like, and
Right.
then you have some meetings you come from the table and you're just like, okay, this year's gonna be a dogfight. And I think going back to that concept of boundaries, one of the things that I started to realize was that like I could only do so many IEP meetings. I could only do so many IEP meetings in a day of a certain caliber, meaning whether I had one meeting in the morning with a team I'm familiar with and a family I'm familiar with versus a meeting in the evening with a team that I've never met. And then I also started to realize, and I recently implemented this where like I don't do meetings on Fridays anymore. I realized that Friday was my like do notes decompress day. And I was finding a lot of schools, like because of scheduling and things like that, having to put them on that date. And then I found myself being incredibly dysregulated going into the weekend. And so one of the boundaries that I set was like, I'm not doing meetings on Fridays, not IEP meetings anyway, or 504 meetings. On Fridays, I could do parent meetings, but not meetings where it's like a whole team and all those pieces. And I, can't do 3, 4 meetings in a day either. And that was something at one point I was doing where it's like, oh, we can fit it in and I had the time. And so it's like I'm doing 4 IEP meetings in a day. And I find myself stressing, like, is it going to start on time? What if it runs over? What if this happens? And so I think some of that comes with the time of doing the work and realizing what really works for you.
Yeah. And you are better about that than I am. We've already established this.
You know what though? I think that comes with that different layer of like again, my being autistic and ADHD and you being ADHD, right? And I think that for me that schedule and needing to know is a piece that factors in for me and I had gotten um in a routine really and gotten away from having meetings on Fridays for a long time. And so when
Right.
they started popping up at first, I was like, oh, it's not a problem because it's not a routine thing. It started to become routine and I realized like it wasn't allowing me to decompress. So it was incredibly dysregulating. And so like I feel like that was really my autism because my autism was like, this is not our norm. And we went outside of our
Right.
norm and it did not go well. And I want to go back.
I love it. Whereas I'm like, dopamine hit, meeting,
Yep.
do it.
Because you said it. You like being
No.
at the IP table. And so I think you're like, And I think too, and then I'm gonna let Lisa talk because I'm not, like, not trying to monopolize, but
No, gosh, no.
Lisa, like, you are very, like, I love my families too, but I think you have been doing this a little longer, and your daughter is was older, right? So the past few years for you has been a different experience and approach, and you have had time a lot more time. And I
Right.
feel like because my kids are younger,
Oh, yeah.
I have had to navigate that, like, where they still have these things, like these elementary school things, and these things where I have to say I
100%.
can't do a meeting because my kids have things I have to attend. And so that also, like, stopped me for a while where I only had certain days and times I could do meetings.
Oh,
And I think
yeah.
the openness of your schedule kind of puts you in that place of like, oh yeah, I can totally do that. But now it's all about like that boundary and regulating that you have to learn.
I know I'm terrible at it. No, but you're 100% right. And I've said it like a million times. I don't think I'd be able to do this work if I was still navigating an IEP table for my own child. Right? I mean, she was still in high school when I started doing this work, but like without disclosing details, like we were in a 3-year settlement. So like I didn't have IEP meetings I was going to. We were navigating other waters and having good times in other ways, but that wasn't one of them. If I had been trying to do this work when she was younger, I couldn't have because I was like having my own daily trauma. No bandwidth. But you said something earlier that sparked a thought in my brain around kind of the dysregulation sometimes we witness in the parents that we're supporting. And I think that sometimes that could tie a little bit into parent guilt, right? So especially in those early consults and like when I first begin working with a family, um, as folks are kind of newer to their understanding of disability, or like their learner's just been diagnosed, or they're just now entering the school system, or whatever it may be, or maybe they've been in the school system for a while, but they've been kind of shined on, like everything's great with Lisa, until Lisa's like completely unraveled. There is this guilt of like, how did I not know this earlier? How did I not see this earlier? Why did I let this? I wanted to be nice and not upset the apple cart. And now like the apples are flying everywhere. And what do I do? And right, like I just met with such a nice mom the other day. Oh my gosh. Parent of a high support needs learner who's now in middle school. And unfortunately, there's been a number of elopements off campus. And so now we need to have, harder conversations with the team because this young person is not safe given the current programming. And I can feel like I just had the consult a few days ago, not only her goodness and her kindness, but kind of her beating herself up that like I didn't advocate more sooner. I didn't want to upset things. And I know when my daughter was younger, I was very worried about retribution. And we felt the retribution, right? So I get that hesitancy of like not wanting to ask for too much or say, I'm sorry, that makes absolutely no sense. But then it's like, at what cost for your child, right? Like, and I think that feeds into that guilt, but also that fear and that worry and that like sense of urgency and dysregulation that we kind of see once somebody decides, okay, I have to bring in somebody to support me through this process.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think that's why we are so good. Pat self on back. If you're not watching this, Lisa was going to drink from her mug, and I said we are so good and started laughing because neither one of us does well with praise. but
And so I choked and the
but I think
water the
that's
water came out
why
my nose.
but I think that's why we are so good as advocates. And one of the biggest compliments I feel that I get from my families is like, yes, thank you. Like, you get it. Like, that's why I hired you, right? Like,
Sure.
Professional aspect aside, again, Lisa being an educator, me being a mental health professional, it's worked in the educational setting. A lot of times our clients hire us because we're parents of neurodivergent learners.
Oh, 100%.
And we know that, and that guilt. And one of the things I always tell my families is that I always say, once you know better, you do better,
Yeah.
and you can only do what you can do. And I don't think, I have never met a parent that didn't start out the process in special education and 504 and IEPs. They started it out with like, the school team is the professional. The school team is the expert. They know what they're talking about. They're going to set us on the right path. They are going to do what is necessary. And, some school teams are that way. And again, if, this is your first time listening to our podcast, like we always say, like, we're not here to bash anyone. But we're here to be honest. And so in that honesty, not all school teams, districts, or even parents are created equal
Sure.
and operate in the same way and in the same mindset. And so a lot of times when they come to me, the guilt is coming from like something felt off, something felt icky, something felt wrong, but I don't know the law. I don't know the policies. I don't know the procedures. And so I couldn't put my finger on it. And then when I started asking questions, I got pushback, and it made me feel like I am doing a disservice to my child. And then to meet with you and realize I'm doing a disservice to my child because, feeling like I'm doing a disservice to my child because I'm not following that gut instinct. Whereas they were making me feel like I was doing a disservice because I was questioning them. And I always have to like reframe that for them. And like, I don't want you to feel like you're doing a disservice for your child either. I want you to feel like they are doing a disservice to your child
Right.
as you all are
Yeah.
not working together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I like to think, like the Pollyanna in me is like, I like to think that nobody is intentionally trying to do a disservice to the learner.
And I think that
Unfortunately, I've met a few
something
teams where
that
I
has
just
built into this bit.
I can't say that with my full chest.
No, that's
Uh,
bullshit.
um, because there is some nonsense that happens, and like I'll totally, as I hide behind my gross tissue, admit that like we're the exception to your rule of family showing up thinking that the schools were the expert. And I think I shared this maybe in our intro episode. I'm looking at you to help me remember.
Yeah.
Just quickly for those that haven't listened to it or like me already forgot what I said. My daughter, when she was young, was at a like a therapy center or nonprofit, and there was like a dessert group that we'd formed, and it ended up being a group of 5 of us for a while, and then 4, and we met for forever once a month, and had something to drink and something to eat. Talk about joy. That got me through. Chocolate will help in all circumstances. But all of their children were 3 years older. And so I'd heard all the stories about the preschool team, and I had wrongfully assumed it was just this one witchy person. And I was correct. She was terrible and continues to be to this day, because once you're on to something, why stop? But, I didn't go in. Unfortunately, I wish I had gone in presuming competence of the team, but because I'd heard so much about this one person, I was doing everything humanly possible to avoid her. It was super successful, if you really want to know. It only took a year to get her qualified. I'm being sarcastic. I am dripping with sarcasm in this moment. But yeah, I do. I think there are families that are like the school team's the expert, and they know, and they told me no, or they didn't. I used to hear this all the time. I don't hear it as much now, but I used to hear the like they did an evaluation and they didn't qualify, and I was like, oh well, what did that evaluation look like? Did you sign paperwork? Did they conduct, right? No, it was a 15-minute observation. And they're like, anyway, I'm like so off the topic we're supposed to be talking about. I lost the train of thought. That should shock everyone listening. But no, I do. I think that
it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. It happens to the best of us. But no, I mean, I don't want to like break confidentiality of anybody in the parent group that we're in, but there was somebody today that was like, I've dropped the ball. And I'm like, you haven't dropped the ball. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're living life. This semester has been like absolute clown show, right? Like, I just want to like take the parent guilt away from people. We are all, for the most part, doing the best we humanly can with what we've got. And we are living in some really uncertain times.
Right.
And, we're recording this at on Friday, October 24th.
Mm-hmm.
Just in full transparency, it won't come out for a couple weeks. But, on November 1st, SNAP benefits are going to stop, right? Like, the government is in the middle of a shutdown. We're dealing with all kinds of chaos right now. If you are doing what you need to do to just kind of get through the day, that is okay. And
No,
you're doing great.
100%. And I like how you said, like, the parent was like, they dropped the ball because I say this all the time and I say it often. I feel like nobody, and I don't care what people say, nobody does more research, has more sleepless nights than parents of neurodivergent and disabled learners. And I want to be clear for any ableist eugenics bastards out there listening to this. It's my podcast to say what I want. Um, this is not of the sense of like, oh my gosh, it's just so exhausting and tiring in their existence and blah, 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 and yada, yada, yada. Shut up. It's not what I mean. What I'm referring to is that, and this goes to, it starts with any parent, any quality parent, once you have this little life, whether you birthed it, adopted it, fostered it, took care of it in whatever capacity, you want the best for them and you want them to have access to everything humanly possible. And you feel this drive to protect them and make sure that they get it, even in spite of your own safety and sanity and health, and and your health.
100%.
And so when you add this layer of them being neurodivergent, them having a disability, having a diagnosis, you then are doing more research, right? And you're trying to figure out, how do I make spaces more comfortable for them, but also how do I make sure that they're comfortable in those spaces, right? Because sometimes that's why we have homeschools and that's why we have private schools and charter schools. Sometimes public school is not the setting. Um, but like with my children, if public school is where they want to be, they're damn well going to be there. And I'm going to do everything I can to have that environment adapted for them. And so what happens is, we are human. And then if you add the layer of being neurodivergent yourself and having your own, or having your own disability, your own diagnoses, then you get exhausted and you get tired and your capacity wanes, and then you feel like it's all on you and you drop the ball. And so that's where I feel like that parent guilt comes from. And I think that's why support is so important.
Oh
Like,
my
that's
gosh.
why we started this podcast. That's why Lisa and I send each other like 26 voice notes. because
It's fine.
because you have to find your people,
Yeah.
and you have to know. I think if you know nothing else, even if you feel like, I don't exactly know how to support my non-speaker, I don't exactly know if we're doing all the things right when it comes to Medicaid, I don't exactly know if I'm asking for all the accommodations, but I think if you have one person who you can reach out to or talk to, or that can reach out to you, and you can just go, this is some bullshit. And they're like, yeah, it is. And I think that you have just hit the jackpot. And I just want to say, this episode is probably going to have the most cuss words, but I think but it's necessary, because we're really talking about that fatigue
Yeah.
and that burnout and that guilt and navigating that and how to support yourself. And if we're going to be honest about that, you got to have some cuss words.
Well, hello. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm laughing because Destiny will occasionally just leave me voice messages that are like 15 seconds long. She's like, you know what irks my soul? And then she'll just say one or two lines and be like, that's all. And then I leave messages back just laughing, like, it's okay, you can block them. That seems nicer than I
No,
am. We've
that's
already established this a long time ago. Yeah, no. And then the piece about joy, I think, oh, I'm going to sound so trite, but
so wait. Before we started
before I pivot, go for it.
before we started recording, Lisa and I were like, okay, this is the episode we're doing, and it totally fits the space that we're in, all of the things going on right now, and we definitely need to record it because we adjust episodes as we need to and topics as we need to. One of the things we talked about was like that joy piece, man. It's so much going on right now. So keep in mind when we talk about finding joy, like if you're just wading water, baby, that's what you got to do.
Seriously. And it's like, I don't even have words. I was like, I haven't thought this through. I only have half-baked thoughts coming out of my mouth. But like, I think what Destiny's saying, just in terms of, finding a person, I'll scroll dog videos because dogs bring me joy,
Yeah.
right? We rescued a puppy a little bit ago and she is an absolute clown. And
Okay.
I just need to like get out a rope or a ball or anything. And she's very flopsy and it just makes me laugh. And I'll just watch her chase down some, I don't know, doesn't matter, a piece of string. She is a mess. Um, but it makes me giggle. And then what's really been funny is we have an older dog, and um, we've always had multiple dogs. And for those of you listening that don't know, we lost one of our dogs in July, and he was only 8, my little baby. But he had brain cancer and he was really, really sick. And so he obviously wasn't feeling well for quite some time. So he wasn't playing with anything. And so my 11-year-old pup wasn't playing with anything either. And we just kind of thought she outgrew it. She's 11 years old, right? Well, this dingaling comes into my house. She's now, which is rescue, so they made up a birthday. So she's like 7.5 months per our best guess, based on her teeth. Um, but she's a puppy. And the 11-year-old is now playing with toys and like trying to jump around and do stuff. And it just brings me so much joy. And it's like, it can be as simple as that. Like, and going back to boundaries, like one of the things with this work is I do feel like, for lack of a better way of putting it, like a sense of responsibility
Right.
to be aware of what is happening politically.
Oh,
And
100.
yet if I doom scroll, I like can't, I feel myself like my throat clenching and like my stomach going into a knot and I turn into a bitch, which is so rare for me. I get grouchy, but it's like the little things of like setting the boundary and not doing that. So for me, today is Friday. My most trusted news source is I like PBS NewsHour on Fridays in particular because David Brooks and Jonathan Capehart do like an 11-minute synopsis of the week. And they are level headed and they're non hysteric. And Jonathan Capehart brings me joy because, like me, he has zero poker face. And you can just tell when he's like wanting to use the 4-letter words, but he's on PBS, and so he's not supposed to. Um, Whereas here we say whatever we want to say. But like I go to them. So instead of watching stuff throughout the week and whatever, and it's not that I don't see stuff, obviously, because I do, but like I've set a boundary on it because when I have totally immersed myself in it, it's really hard not to feel dragged down. For me, this work actually brings a tremendous amount of joy. So just focusing on that work, My dogs bring me joy. This week, for the first time since July, I started lifting weights again. I don't know that it's bringing me joy because I can barely flipping move, but it's intended to bring me joy. But it doesn't have to be something grandiose. Like, I'm so tired of cooking. I could just cry. Like, why am I in charge of that? Who put me in charge of that? I'm over it. So before Destiny and I started today, I threw some damn chicken in a crock pot and threw a can of enchilada sauce on top of it. And dinner is cooking. It's a gift I gave myself. Because my football game is on later, and I will be watching my football game after I do my episode, my 11 minutes of Brooks and Capehart, and dinner's going to be served. It's little things.
Little things. I love that you mentioned that though, because even as a mental health professional, and this is not mental health advice, but as a mental health professional, when I'm working with my clients, that's what I always tell them. I'm like, we have this perception that to have joy, to do self-care, to do any of that, that it has to be like 30 minutes or an hour or multiple hours. And it's like, in life today, you just don't have time for that. Even if you're not a parent, like you just don't have time for that. That is not, society is not built that for us. And so it's really like if you can just get 5, 10, 15 minutes even of something that can significantly change your mood. And so I think, you mentioned great boundaries as far as everything going on politically, because absolutely we have to be in the know about that as advocates. Like it's significantly impacting special education and disability rights, and we have to know that. But another thing I want to bring up is just boundaries, as the advocate in with clients. Like some of the boundaries that I have to set is that I think last year was the first time I started using the vacation responder on my email.
Oh,
And I actually started setting that up where I'm like, I'm going to be out. This is what you can do if it's an emergency. If it's a meeting cancels, I made it very specific. But I started using that because I found even when I was still doing advocacy things like going to a conference and things like that, just me getting overwhelmed by the communication, which wasn't their intent. They had no idea where I was. They thought it was just a regular, like you said, email and communicate.
sure.
And so setting that was a great boundary for me. The other thing was I have had to like see an email late, and because I'm like a response, so I don't forget person, and tell myself like unread it. So I read it, I see the information, I see that okay, this is going to require a lot more input or insight or research than I can do at this moment. I click on read, and that gives me that ability. Another boundary that I've done is I'll email and say received. I will follow up with you tomorrow. I quickly let them know, like, I did get it to ease their anxiety. But I will have to respond at another time. So those are some boundaries that I have found to be effective on the advocacy side of things. On the
Yeah.
parent side of things, with schools, I have let them know, like, do not call me if you don't need to call me. If y'all don't see, Lisa is laughing with putting her head down right now because she knows this tone that I get, and that's why he's gonna play with me. Um, because there's a lot of trauma for me from when my son first started out of phone calls. And
Yeah.
so sometimes the schools will start out with like, so we're gonna call you for positive things. And I was
Please
like,
don't.
don't call me at all. If you call me, they better be sick or it better be a prearranged phone call that we had because otherwise I'm going to assume they're in trouble. And it's like, it's no, it's no shade towards the school. It's just that's the trauma history for me. And so I have built that with my son's teams and we've had the discussion. So now they'll like message through like the little apps, because there's always apps, Class Dojo, Remind, all these mini apps. And they'll say like, hey, can you give me a call later? Can I give you a call later so we can discuss some things? They're letting me know ahead of time so I can go and get myself together and know like everything's fine, my kid's fine, like like
Right. Nobody lost a limb.
yes, with the school. And then on the joy side, I'm a very avid reader. And when I was working on my dissertation, and for those who don't know, I worked on my dissertation many years. So I started it before I married my husband. We've been married almost 12 years. I had to stop it because we got married and I had 2 kids. And then I went back and finished it. And so I couldn't really read for joy like I always have loved since I was like 3 years old.
Yeah.
um, because I was reading for school. And so one of the things I do for joy is I read. I am a very fast reader, as in I'll read a book in like 5 days or less. And so my goal this year is to read 30 books. I have already read 27.
Good for you.
Oh,
Do you have a particular genre you like, or are you kind of all over the place?
I like mysteries and thrillers. And
You are
so
the silent patient.
anything with crime in it, I like. Not true crime though. I don't like true
No,
crime.
because that's real.
I like made up, and in the past 2 years, I've started to strictly read books outside of the Percy Jackson series. So just going off on a little tangent, I did not read the Percy Jackson series when I was growing up at all. And I love Greek mythology. And
Oh,
so
cool.
it was recommended that I read it, even though I'm an adult and, it's young adult novels. And so I went back and read it, and I read the entire series. And I was like, this is awesome. So aside from that, in the last 2 years, I have made a shift where I only read novels with female protagonists. So
Okay.
the lead character has to be a female. And so I've been in two genres. I've been in the crime mystery thriller genre, and then I've been in the fantasy magic genre. So that's what I've been reading.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. Yeah, no, before I started doing this work during COVID, which
Mm-hmm.
was obviously a stressful time,
Yes.
um, and Aaron's book had initially launched, we discovered like Bookstagram.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I super got into reading at that point. And it's fallen off since I've been doing this work because all I do is read IEPs and this and that. But what I've actually started reading again too, but I've been doing audiobooks, which has been helpful because I go take a walk and I listen to the audiobook, and it's something I really love too, but that's fun. Okay, well, when we're not recording, because nobody needs to sit and listen to us talk about books, but
What
we'll book swap.
But what you just mentioned was interesting though, because I have noticed that a lot of ADHDers like audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
And I've found that very interesting. And so like Nate does a lot of audiobooks. So that's my husband, by the way. He has ADHD. And he does a lot of audiobooks, but I like the physical book. He likes the physical book too, but he finds that he doesn't finish them.
Mm.
Finishes the audiobooks. And I think it's the part of like physically having to sit down and go through the book versus the audiobook. He can be moving and doing things and listening to it. So I think that's what it is, that ADHD piece. Um,
I like need to pace.
you know, back to the joy piece, even though that was part of the joy conversation. The other
Totally.
thing for me has been allowing more childlike joy. So in the sense of like, my kids watch this show called Total Drama Island. It's I think a new season came out. I don't know. It's an animated show. It came out like years ago, and then they made a new season. But they've been on this kick of like, "Mommy, watch it! Like let's watch it because we want to hear what you say about it," and blah blah blah. And I've been letting them do that, and I find out that it's because they're laughing, I'm laughing, we're laying down, and it's just like, and of course the things in the show happening. I'm like, what in the world am I watching?
Right.
But it's like it's enjoyable. And then just even today, so it's ironic that we're doing this episode. So if anyone is familiar, there's a play place in Georgia called Monkey Joe's. And
Hmm.
Monkey Joe's is where you go and you can like do bounce houses and all these things. And so my kids used to go there a lot when we lived like an hour and a half from it. Now we live a little further from that, but my dad would like pick them up from where we lived, bring them to Monkey Joe's to have a good time because it was in between traveling to their house.
Oh,
Um,
perfect.
so it's like a stopping point. And there you get these little ducks. And so think about when you see people with Jeeps. I don't know when that became a thing, but people with Jeeps have all those little rubber duckies in their
Mhm.
cars, right? It's those. So my youngest has this habit of hiding them in my office, and I go and find them. And so today he's like, Mommy, I got two ducks from school. He's like, so I want to hide them. And he's like, I want you to hide them, and I want to find this time. And I was like,
Oh.
okay, that's plot twist. He's like, I know I'm mixing it up. And Lisa's he knows he absolutely would say that. And so then the oldest was like, well, I want to play because he loves to play hide and seek. So we literally just did 3 rounds of like me hiding these ducks and them going to find the ducks. And then I did that 3 different times and they were just like running around and then they were like, we don't see them. And I was like, see some in plain sight. And we were counting them and finding them. And it was just like little things like that. That was just like
Yeah.
random, like, we're going to do this. Things like that bring me an incredible amount of joy. And it was just like I think it was a thing we did over the span of 15 minutes because they were racing around like little crazies trying to find the ducks. But I think when we talk about that piece of that finding your joy, it's things that can be solo, like I mentioned with my reading. It's things that can be solo, like Lisa mentioned with her dogs. It's things that can be with your family, and it's things that can be support based. But it's very important whether you're listening to this and you're the advocate, the educator, the administrator, the related service provider, or the parent, that you find something in your day to give you those 10, 15, 20 minutes of joy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, my mom used to always joke with me that she could tell if I'd moved through whatever upset I was feeling when she could hear me singing, which nobody really wants to hear me singing. And I'm old enough that we would listen to the radio and try to catch your song and tape your song when it would come on.
Yes.
Everybody's listening's like, huh? Yeah. We were cool. Just want you to know. But it's true. I catch the same thing with my son. He and I are the same person. He's just taller and younger. But yeah, like that singing piece, right? Like to me, it's simple things. Like what are little things that can help, right? For me, it's clean sheets, right? Or this is really dumb, but if I have produce in my house and it's not processed and I'm trying to cook and it's not clean, I am so far less likely going to use it. So if I can make myself, and I will put on music and sing and dance in my kitchen and wash all the lettuce and cut all the veggies and, peel the carrots and dice them up, right? And then I've got a drawer full of fresh produce ready to go that I will actually eat. It brings me joy. So it's little things, like whatever it is. Like I don't think of it as like food prep. I don't even know, or meal prepping. Like I'm not organized enough to do all that. That feels like pressure. But it's little things, and I will listen to a podcast or I'll listen to music, and like everybody in my house knows, like, okay, A, she's off her nut, and B, just let her sing to whatever she's doing and dance around the kitchen. The dogs are looking at me like I've got 12 heads. Like, what is this woman doing? But they stick around because the kitchen is the magic room where things fall from the sky. So, you just never know. But yeah, I mean, it's like as best you can letting the guilt go, knowing that the constant advocacy is exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And, in those little ways and in those moments where you can, letting your foot off the accelerator a little bit. And yeah, whatever it is. And I've seen lots of parents, neurodivergent parents of neurodivergent learners, really talking about these little ways that they're trying to bring joy into their lives. And it is hard because the world right now is a really, really, really scary place. There's lots of really awful things happening right now. And, one of the themes that I heard a lot in Kamala Harris's campaign, and I still hear it now, is that there's joy in resistance. And finding that, right? Like when I went to the No Kings protest last weekend, like there was serious business happening, but there was a lot of laughter and joy and connection and community and, oh my gosh, can I see your sign? And right, like folks were in inflatables. Thank you, Portland, Oregon, for starting a trend. Like, but I think that those pieces are important, that it's part of it. It's not an either or. It's how do these things kind of marry together?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, one of the things that, as we wrap up, one of the things that we really wanted to do with this episode was acknowledge that, one, shit's not rainbows and kittens. Um, Advocacy is hard work. And no matter how, and I'm sure Lisa's heard this too. Like I've heard before, like, oh my God, you do so effortlessly and you make it look so easy. And I'm like, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of energy. And of course, people are saying that in a positive way. And I appreciate that I make it look that way. You know what I mean? But I think it's also important for somebody that's sitting there going, I'm exhausted and I'm tired to know, like, we get exhausted too. We get tired too. And you have to, refill your cup. You really have to. You have to recognize the wins. Sometimes we're so dysregulated, and now I'm talking, about my parents. Sometimes we're so dysregulated and we're so tired and we're so exhausted that we don't even know when we've won. And I find
Right.
advocate
True.
reminding families like and parents like that is a win. Like that's a win.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so, you know, making sure that you're paying attention to those wins, whether they seem big or they seem small, and making sure you're finding that joy, whether it is by yourself or with your family or with your learner or with your community or others. And really, I hope this episode helped you find a sense of community, which was the whole reason why we really wanted to start this podcast, was to shine a light on the fact that you're not alone navigating this, and that, you can always come and listen to us and see, like, this is real life and we're living it every day. But there's joy in it, and there's definitely always 100% between Lisa and I going to be resistance
Oh, yeah.
against all of the ableist things in the world.
Amen. A word by Dr. Destiny Huff.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you haven't, please make sure to check out our other episodes where we talked about parent input, neuroaffirming resistance, how we got started into this process, documentation, and bias at the IEP table. And we hope that you all will keep listening.
Absolutely.
Thank you again for joining us here in the Affirming Village. We're your co-hosts, Dr. Destiny Huff and Lisa Baskin-Wright, and we hope today's conversation leaves you feeling seen, supported, and better equipped to advocate for yourself or your learner. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone else in the village. Until next time, keep advocating, keep affirming, and keep building the